Do not give in to fear. We are fearless. This is not the time to be afraid. This is a time to stand up and fight back and to resist any temptation for them to divide us. We're in this together. The rule of law is on our side, and the one institution that has stood by our side is the courts. We will not give in, not give up. We will not capitulate. We will not bow. We will not bend. We will survive.
There's a long history of forced sterilizations of women of color, of people with disabilities in this country. It's very recent. Maybe they aren't going to explicitly say we should forcibly sterilize people, but it's about making sure that certain people aren't born.
Welcome to Assembly Required with Stacie Abrams from Crooked Media. I'm your host, Stacie Abrams. This version of the Republican Party has introduced a host of new avatars for their horrific ambitions. There's Elon Musk and Russell Vogt, names we've learned as they raised the civil service and stole our personal data from government databases to likely auction off to their tech bros. But they did not come to power alone, nor did they come for the sole purpose of decimating democracy. As we discussed with the Atlantic writer David Graham, Project 2025 is a blueprint for the rise of Christian nationalism. Phase 1 was breaking America. Phase 2 is combating the permanence of multiculturalism by promoting policies to solve a numerical conundrum. What is a proto-fascist to do when faced with a demographic transition that will result in an America with no racial majority in less than 20 years, at a time when we're also facing declining birth rates? Now, to be fair, the United States, like several other Western nations, does indeed face a declining birth rate, and this is a reality that presents legitimate challenges. In response, we desperately need policies that support families in a nation with crippling housing costs, with crippling childcare costs, with limited parental leave, and with devastating maternal mortality rates, particularly for Black women. Not to mention the evisceration of abortion access and reproductive health care across the board that has already killed pregnant women. But the Trump administration's approach to policies that encourage people to have children, those policies don't seem to address these dynamics. Instead of a solution that leverages what we already have and what we know works, like the American Rescue Plan, the Republicans have decided to champion an approach rooted in the pro-natalism movement. Their ambition? To bring forth a very specific vision for what American families should look like. The pro-natalist movement espouses an ideology of higher birth rates, and for some, that means only among white families. But overall, it embraces nearly any means to achieve those birth rates. Elon Musk is an acolyte and unfortunately active proponent of this pursuit when he's not extorting African nations to hire his satellite company's unreliable services. At its core, the movement thrives on fear, warning of an apocalyptic future where declining birth rates among their preferred demography will lead to total economic and societal collapse. Republicans in the administration and, unfortunately, in Congress have picked up on these ideas and are now proposing incentives to boost birth rates. Among them, a $1,000 baby bonus for every new mother, intrusive reproductive tracking tools, and yes, seriously, a National Medal of Motherhood for women who have 6 or more children, which harkens back to terrible, terrible behaviors during the Nazi regime. Declining birth rates do have troubling implications for our economy and our ability to support an aging population. But the pro-natalist approach raises very serious concerns. You see, it's not just about encouraging larger families. I'm the second of 6 kids. I know about large families. The issue is which families are being encouraged to grow. Much of the movement embraces ideas like genetic engineering to create the, quote, best and brightest. It includes calls to restrict access to contraception and to abortion. And it even flirts with white nationalist conspiracy theories like the Great Replacement, the false belief that there is a deliberate plot to diminish white influence by replacing white populations with non-white immigrants. This vision of America is not new. And when it has been raised before, it has revealed dangerous, insidious, and horrifying policies that were put in place to make it a reality. And so today we will explore the myths and the reality of pronatalism with two people who are immersed in the history of the movement and the motivations behind it. Dr. Karen Guzzo, the director of the Carolina Population Center and a professor of sociology at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and the senior writer for New York Magazine's Intelligencer, Sarah Jones. Dr. Karen Guzzo, Sarah Jones, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start with the basics. Dr. Guzzo, if you don't mind, I'm going to call you Karen. Would love to have you describe to our audience what exactly is pronatalism and what are the different branches of the movement?
Sure. So pronatalism basically is this belief that there aren't enough babies being born, that the birth rate is too low, and at the population level, we need to get people to have more births, and really to get women. It's about women to have more births because our birth rate is too low and it could potentially lead to a number of problems down the road. And so there are different groups of people who are worried about different components of the low birth rate. So there are folks like Elon Musk, who has talked extensively about population collapse and low birth rates as sort of these existential issues facing the world, and that they are kind of the most pressing issues we face. And so he, as I'm sure you know, is kind of on this personal mission, apparently, to repopulate the earth. He has many children, and he's doing this I think, we don't know all for sure, through IVF. And then you have other prominent sort of tech folks who are also using IVF. And they want to not only make sure more babies are being born, but it's sort of the best and brightest, which it skirts really closely to eugenics. Who should be having births and what kind of births we want. And then you have kind of the religious groups who would agree we need to have more births, but they want to make sure we have births that are born within marital unions. And ideally, it's sort of Christian births happening to sort of quote unquote real Americans who are married. And they're really thinking back to this kind of glorified and not entirely real imagined history, really, of kind of the heyday of the family where people got married young and they had lots of kids. So they're looking back at the baby boom and saying that's what we need to recreate. And then you have this group, and they're not necessarily clear delineations, really. This last group that is really concerned about sort of who's having births and not just their marital status, but really focused on births to true Americans. So they don't want births to immigrants. They don't want births to people who they deem somehow of an inferior race. They don't want other religions necessarily besides Christianity. So Christian nationalism plays a big role in this one. And this is not a new argument in the United States. People have been arguing for a long time about, whether immigrants coming in and they sort of will have more children than real, true Americans. And so the pronatalist movement is really concerning for those of us who are worried about making a better life for everybody, because it's really about focusing on certain types of people.
So Sarah, given the different strains of pronatalism that Karen has described for us, can you talk about why pronatalism has so aggressively entered the public conversation now?
Absolutely. So Karen mentioned Elon Musk, and I see him as being a huge factor in sort of the rise of pronatalism as a topic that sort of preoccupies the media at the moment. And for very good reason, given his term in the Trump administration and, the influence that he has as the world's richest man. But he's not alone. I think we also have to think about J.D. Vance, our vice president, who's made a lot of comments over the years about childless cat ladies and the need for more births, but very specifically within the format that Karen was talking about when we're talking about Christian nationalism. So these are American births, and they're happening in quote unquote traditional families. So like a heterosexual union and biological children.
And I'm going to stick with you for a second, Sarah. How do you see the conversation about pronatalism intersecting with the Dobbs decision and the changes we are seeing nationally to reproductive health and reproductive rights?
Mm-hmm. That makes me want to go back a few decades, really. I've written a little bit about pronatalism for New York Magazine, and from a personal perspective, because I grew up in an evangelical subculture where people have been talking about the need to have larger families and marry young for a very long time. So in the 80s, when I was born and, my parents decided to homeschool, this was a big topic of conversation. People were worried about the population even then. And not coincidentally, there was the rise of the Christian right as we know it today, and this emphasis on rolling back abortion rights. And in some cases, access to contraception by, reclassifying some forms of contraception as being abortifacient, even though that's not how they work. And with the Dobbs decision, of course, they really got what they wanted. And so that's an important context for the conversation that we're having now. And I think it's one of the reasons they see this opening to sort of press the attack.
And Karen, what are the legitimate concerns about the falling birth rate in the United States? And I want to connect it back to Sarah's conversation about reproductive health. But let's start with just what are the actual facts about the birth rate in the U.S.?
So the birth rate in the United States is at a record low. So that is a true point. It's been declining pretty steadily since the Great Recession. We are now on par with some of our peer countries in Europe and East Asia. And so the number that we typically use, the estimate that we use is something called the total fertility rate. And right now it's at 1.63. And what that number measures is a hypothetical woman, if she's to go through her childbearing years at today's current age-specific rates, how many kids might she have at the end of her childbearing years? So it's a hypothetical number. So it assumes that, for instance, today's 20-year-olds, when they are 30, when they are 40, will have the childbearing behaviors of today's 40-year-olds. And so that's not likely to be the case because we know people are waiting longer. We're seeing birth rates increase among people at later ages. So it's not likely to be true, but it's an easy number to estimate. And the reason that draws so much alarm is because there's in sort of the demographic speak, something called the replacement level, which is 2.1. So every woman basically needs to replace herself and a partner. And so if we have a number below that, we start to worry, what will populations look like? And so this is a relatively new conversation for the United States to have because compared to our peer nations, we were humming along right around replacement level for quite a while in the late 90s and early 2000s, up until the Great Recession. And so we didn't talk about low birth rates or those issues. And then the Great Recession hit and birth rates pretty steadily fell. And usually birth rates fall during a recession, but they recover, and they didn't. And so now people are starting to have these conversations. Oh my gosh, what does it mean? So when you have low birth rates and a large population, your population can still grow, but it starts to get older. And so we have the baby boomers entering into their retirement years. We worry about what happens when you don't have enough labor market workers for the labor market, or who pays into Social Security. And so the fix that pronatalists seem to latch onto is we need more births. I would argue, though, that births happening today are already kind of too late to help in the future, so we need to think about other potential solutions to what's happening. So how might we fund Social Security differently? What kind of things might we need in the labor market? How can we care for the elderly? And so there are other solutions besides having more births, which, to be honest, is not a terribly helpful solution because it doesn't help for many years. So a birth today isn't a worker for 20 years.
And I want to unpack the numbers a little bit more because I want to go back to the great replacement theory that also is driving this. When you pick apart the falling birth rates, is there a difference based on the racial demography of the women giving birth? And what does that say about this pronatalism movement?
Yeah, that's a great question. If you were to go back 20, 30 years, you'd probably see some bigger racial and ethnic differences. Right now, they're actually pretty small. Hispanic women tend to have slightly more children on average, so their total fertility rate is about 2.3, and for African Americans and whites, it's around 1.6, 1.7. So there aren't actually these big differences. The idea that Hispanics have really high birth rates used to be more true. There used to be more evidence to support it, but that's not really the case now. So very few people are having kind of these large families that some of the great replacement folks are worried about, although facts are not necessarily particularly important for them. The other thing I would say that gets missed in this story of low birth rates and falling birth rates is that 80% of the decline is due to fewer births to people in their teens and early 20s. And those are almost always births that people themselves, when they're having those births, would say, I did not want to have a baby at this time. Not that they didn't ever want to have kids, but they didn't want to have that baby that young under that context. And so this is a good news story of contraceptive access, of reproductive autonomy, that people are able to avoid having births when they don't want to at younger ages. The question then becomes, are they able to have the births when they want them under the context they want them at later ages?
Assembly Required with Stacie Abrams is brought to you by Mosh. Like so many of us these days, I want to be more intentional about how I take care of my body. Since my weeks include lots of travel, I get excited by an on-the-go protein snack that is satisfying and delicious. And now I found one that also helps me do a little bit of good for the world: Mosh bars. Mosh, which you may have heard about on Shark Tank, was founded by Maria Shriver and her son, Patrick Schwarzenegger, with a simple mission: to create a conversation about brain health through food, education, and research. Maria's father suffered from Alzheimer's, and since then, she and Patrick have dedicated themselves to finding ways to help other families dealing with this debilitating disease. Mosh joined forces with the world's top scientists and functional nutritionists to go beyond your average protein bar. With 8 delicious flavors, including a plant-based one in peanut butter and chocolate, each Mosh bar is made with ingredients that support brain health, like ashwagandha, lion's mane, collagen, and omega-3s. And now, Mosh comes with a new look and new formulation, featuring a game-changing, brain-boosting ingredient you won't find in any other bar. Mosh is now the first and only food brand boosted with cognizin, a premium nootropic that supplies the brain with a patented form of acetylcholine. But here's the best part to make you feel good. Mosh donates a portion of all proceeds from your order to fund gender-based brain health research through the Women's Alzheimer's Movement. Why gender-based? 2/3 of all Alzheimer patients are women. Mosh is working closely to close the gap between women and men's health research. Keeping up with a brain-healthy diet while also doing what we like to do here at Assembly Required, contribute to progress, is why I like Mosh bars. Right now, my favorite flavors are the white chocolate and the other white chocolate. Whether I'm headed to a podcast taping or rushing to the airport, I can always find time to enjoy this delicious snack. If you want to find ways to give back to others and fuel your body and your brain, Mosh bars are the perfect choice for you. Head to moshlife.com/assembly to save 20% off plus free shipping on the Bestsellers Trial Pack. That's 20% off plus free shipping on the Bestsellers Trial Pack at moshlife.com/assembly. And thank you, Mosh, for sponsoring this episode. Assembly Required with Stacie Abrams is brought to you by OneSkin. I use OneSkin's OS1 face and eye care regimen, especially at night, because it can help remove the day's makeup in a few easy steps. I like that it helps keep my skin hydrated and feeling fresh, and that I don't need a complicated routine from TikTok to take care of my skin. A few pumps of cleanser, dots of moisturizer, and a pat of eye cream on each is all I need. Free from over 1,500 chemicals and preservatives that can make skin red, irritated, or itchy, their products are certified safe for sensitive skin. They're dermatologist tested and approved by independent testing platforms like SkinSafe. Founded and led by an all-woman team of skin longevity scientists, OneSkin's products are backed by extensive lab and clinical data to validate their efficacy and safety on all skin types. They've got over 6,300 5-star reviews for their full line of face, body, sun, and travel-size products. OneSkin's multi-purpose products prove that you don't need a complicated routine to achieve healthier skin. OneSkin is the world's first skin longevity company. By focusing on the cellular aspects of aging, OneSkin keeps your skin looking and acting younger for longer. For a limited time, you can try OneSkin with 15% off using code ASSEMBLY at oneskin.co. That's 15% off oneskin.co with code ASSEMBLY. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Give your skin the scientifically proven, gentle care it deserves with One.
Dive into the magical world of Edwina's Bedtime Adventures by Ariel Williams. Join Edwina, the little hippo with a big imagination, as she drifts off to sleep and embarks on whimsical bedtime journeys. Whether she's saving the day as a brave firefighter, caring for patients as a nurse at Sunny Valley Hospital, or exploring the wonders of the jungle, Edwina's heartwarming tales will capture the imagination of young readers and spark endless bedtime giggles. This is an electronic book. You'll need an EPUB reader or PDF reader to enjoy this whimsical tale. Get your copy today at lulubooks.com or follow the link tree in profile to get your copy and let the adventure begin.
Gas Station Diaries by Adam King is a compelling collection of fictional stories drawn from the author's experiences working at a gas station during the tumultuous year of 2020. Set in the unassuming locale of Rainbow Land, the narrative unfolds in a place where time seems to stand still, yet unexpected drama and human encounters abound. This is an electronic book. You must upload an EPUB reader or a PDF reader to enjoy this book. Get your copy today at lulubooks.com and let the story unfold.
The Baker and the Handyman's Sweet Connection. In a quaint village nestled in a picturesque valley, there stood a small house in the shape of a mushroom. This whimsical home belonged to a young boy named Jamie, barely out of high school, who had a passion for baking. Inside, his cozy kitchen was always filled with the sweet aroma of cakes, cookies, and all sorts of delightful treats. What made his creation special was that each of his cakes was shaped like tiny mushrooms, a nod to his quirky home. Jamie's baking became the talk of the town. From birthdays to celebrations, everyone in the village adored his sweets.
Get your digital copy today at lulubooks.com and experience the adventure in EPUB or PDF format. Make sure you have a compatible reader to dive into this unforgettable journey. Don't miss out, unlock the secrets, and let the story begin.
Sable's Song, A Siren's Journey to Joy. Once upon a time, in a small, worn-out town in Middle America, there lived a little child named Sable. Worn into poverty, Sable's body was frail, so thin that you could see her bones, but her heart was filled with an exuberance that not even hunger could dull. Sable was awkward, with dark, deep-set eyes that sparkled with innocence and wonder. Despite being born a boy, Sable always knew she was different. Inside her lived a girl, bright and effervescent, waiting to bloom.
Get your digital copy today at lulubooks.com and experience the adventure in EPUB or PDF format. Make sure you have a compatible reader to dive into this unforgettable journey. Don't miss out, unlock the secrets, and let the story begin.
The Park of Secrets.
In the year 2060, near the heart of Florida, just a stone's throw from Disney World, stood a theme park unlike any other, a place known as the House of Secrets. It was a magical park, much like a state fair, filled with towering rides, carnival games, and parades that drew people from all over the world. But among the grand Ferris wheel and the colorful day parade, there was one attraction that outshined them all, the Parade Princess, a mesmerizing mermaid named Kenya. Kenya was a sight to behold. At 22 years old, fresh out of college, she had the kind of beauty that drew people to her like moths to a flame. Her brown skin glowed under the park lights, her hair a stunning mix of purple and pink that cascaded over her shoulders. Little pink hearts adorned her cheeks, and a ribbon of color stretched across her nose. But it wasn't just her beauty that made her special. Her eyes, big and almond-shaped, seemed to capture the hearts of everyone who saw.
Discover the magic of the Park of Secrets. Step into a world of wonder with the Park of Secrets, a heartwarming tale by Ariel Williams that will captivate your imagination. This enchanting story is now available exclusively on Lulu Books.
The Future, Daughters of Liberty, A New Dawn. In 2040, the United States was a fractured nation. still reeling from the fallout of Project 2025. The catastrophic policy that had allowed a resurgence of systemic oppression. The Deep South had seceded once more, forming the antebellum republic, where human trafficking, racial inequality, and gender oppression became tragically normalized. The Second Civil War erupted as the rest of the nation sought to free those trapped in this dystopian regime. After years of bloodshed, Kamala Harris had finally led the Union to victory, restoring a fragile sense of hope. But the battle scars ran deep, especially in places like Louisiana, where the remnants of a broken society still lingered.
Get your digital copy today at lulubooks.com and experience the adventure in EPUB or PDF format. Make sure you have a compatible reader to dive into this unforgettable journey. Don't miss out, unlock the secrets, and let the story begin.
A Dying Planet, The Last Harvest.
In the year 2060, Earth is a shadow of its former self, choked by pollution, endless concrete, and abandoned by nature. Only a small fishing village by the sea has managed to preserve the planet's last untouched forest. In this dying world, June and Win, two young girls and the last children in their village, cling to the remnants of hope and innocence. Win roams the forest, collecting the season's last harvest, while June sings songs that echo with a haunting beauty through the village.
Get your digital copy today at lulubooks.com and experience the adventure in EPUB or PDF format. Make sure you have a compatible reader to dive into this unforgettable journey. Don't miss out, unlock the secrets, and let the story begin.
I told you. What did I tell you? Didn't I tell you? 'Cause I told you. And when did I tell you? A long time ago. And what did I say will happen when I told you? Exactly what just happened.